And welcome to Let Them Talk. I'm Paul DeRienzo. We have a great show in store for you today, a continuation of the show that we began with Shannon Taylor on The Conversation. He's on at the same channel, same network, just a half hour before us at 7 o'clock. And so you should check his show out. If you're going to check our show out, definitely watch The Conversation.
Thank you.
All right. So Shannon, and we have two special guests. Immediately to Shannon's right is Shannon's dad, who you might or might not know. He's been on the show before, and his name is Michael Taylor. And we are pleased to also introduce on the show, who's been here before but hasn't been for a while, my dad, Paul DeRienzo Sr. So we have Shannon and Paul and their dads, Mike and Paul Sr., which is a continuation of the show we were already doing. So it was a very interesting conversation, and we are live, so we invite you to join us live, and the number will be there on the bottom a little later if you wish to call in and ask us questions, because you hear about the greatest generation, but we really do have the greatest generation here. You know, sometimes when you say to our audience the greatest generation, they think, oh, the 60s, right? But there was another greatest generation, the generation that won the big one, right? The one that took on and I don't say everything was right about everything that was done, but defeating the Nazis was right. There's no way around that. They had to be defeated.
Strongest
right?
army in the world.
Right. You know, questions can be made about this or that, but let's focus on those damn Nazis and getting what they really deserved. They were asking for it for a long time, and they finally got it. And you know, I'm a peaceful person, but I ain't that peaceful. And
that's good to know.
I'm a peaceful person. I believe in peace, but you know, at times even the most peaceful of people cannot sit quietly while innocent people are being murdered. Right? You can't. It can't be done. And World War II was famous.
The world did.
And
the world sat quietly through all the 30s. And if not for Japan attacking America, we would have sat quietly again.
Fortunately, for our two dads did not sit quietly, right? They got involved and they did something, right?
They never sat quietly.
Right. They never sat quietly, all right? Dad, you didn't sit quietly. As a matter of fact, you were an engineer. You were on the home front, being a little young for the war, thank goodness. But you know, it was all, every little aspect of society was turned towards winning this war. You described earlier on the reasons why. I mean, the people fighting were your neighbors and your friends and your family members. So, you worked at the Brooklyn Navy Yard, and it's an interesting story because we know about the Liberty ships. You know, you're an expert. What's a Liberty ship?
A Liberty ship was something that we gave to England.
Are you wearing your mic, by the way?
Yes, of course.
You have
it up?
No, you sure?
Oh,
no, there it is.
Well, they hear me anyway.
They can hear
me.
They can
hear me anyway. A Liberty ship is something that we gave to Europe and England primarily as part of a Lend-Lease program, which Roosevelt managed to sell them, and we didn't give it to them, we sold it to them.
Okay.
And
so these were ships that were used to bring cargo?
They were from our dockyards.
Right.
They were the ships that nobody thought could float again. And we still didn't want to give, Congress still didn't want to give it to them because we were so isolationist. But it required magnificent engineers to make them float and to make them work.
As we're going to talk to one of the ones who did. Dad, what was wrong with the Liberty ships? They always talk about them in glowing terms. They did an amazing thing. I have a very good friend of mine who was on one that sank after a German submarine shot it with a submarine, and he was floating around in the ocean for like 2 days before they pulled him out. And he was lucky to be alive, and he lived to be well into his 90s. So, they had a problem when they first went out there with those Liberty ships.
You mean structurally?
A structural problem. There was a problem.
Well, they were being mass produced, and they were being produced as quickly as possible. And so a lot of testing that would have normally been done before a product of that sort got on the line wasn't done. And so we had some experiences that indicated that something bad was occurring. Basically, the first indication was that a ship lying idle at harbor after it maybe delivered its cargo or something like that, particularly in very cold waters, as might be in Asia and in Europe, certain places, would suddenly fail just literally crack.
Crack down the middle.
Yeah.
Like,
Right. And
Like the bell.
after this happened a number of times, a few times, began to investigate what might be the cause of it. Now, it turned out, without going into a lot of detail, it turned out that the steel that was being used, while it had all the strength properties that were necessary structurally to keep it together, to carry the loads and the likes of that, it suffered from a propensity towards brittle failure. And by brittle failure, I mean the steel would literally crack without any deformation. Normally, you would expect that a piece of metal would crack would first start to deform. And once steel is properly made, it acts that way. And so a lot of investigation was done under tough conditions there to get an answer as soon as possible. And it was determined that the steel was not being properly manufactured at the mills. And basically what was happening was that it didn't have a treatment that would cause the steel to withstand this thing. And it turned out that the normal testing that we would do, the tensile testing, was not sufficient. That only showed strength and the ability to withstand a certain elongation before it failed.
Tensile strengthening means like taking a sample and putting out a weight on both ends and seeing what happens.
Well, usually it's in a vertical position.
Vertical, you pull on it. Or
until it failed. So had to resort to a lot of microscopic investigation of the composition, of the structure of the steel, and a different testing method. The method that was used was what is known as Sharpie V-notch testing. That is to say, you would make specimens that looked like a rectangular cigarette, and in the middle of it would be a very precisely machined notch.
Right.
And would be looked at under a microscope because it had to be perfectly smooth, and so that the notch itself, or the condition of the notch, would not detract from the test that would be performed. And it was called a test for brittle failure. What you would put in a machine, instead of pulling on it, it had a big weight on it with a knife edge, and it would strike the specimen, and it would either crack easily and the weight would go through, or it would resist the weight going through and deform. So the steel that were being used for those ships was brittle, and that
proved it.
The Sharpie would show that.
How come
So
we
we
gave
had
the
to,
Nazis better steel? We sent the Nazis better steel than we sent the British on our own ships.
Well, it depends on how it was used. I'll put it that way.
Yeah.
So then, we had to develop heat treatment methods of normalizing the structure in the steel and adding elements to it that would give it this.
How about those ships that were already built?
All right. There were instances where some of these Liberty ships would go into harbors to deliver their load, get to the harbor, and having reached there, and would actually begin to crack.
Right down the middle.
Yeah. From wave action in the extremely cold waters.
Was this in Europe,
Right.
in the middle of the sea?
Yeah.
Usually in Asia.
In Asia.
Whether it happened in the middle of the sea, probably there may have been, but then the ship would have been destroyed. So, and at the
It
bottom
was
of
somewhat
the sea.
classified because it didn't become public until one actually did it in the harbor in front of a bunch of newspaper reporters, and they saw it. They couldn't keep it classified anymore after that.
So that brought about a whole reanalysis of the steel compositions, of the testing, to develop this notch toughness, because the very presence of a notch would be the incubation for the failure under the bending, or instead of bending, it would just simply crack open. And a lot of work went on at the Navy yards.
And particularly, you were, and we're talking about your work at the
Brooklyn Navy, at the materials.
Hey, Brooklyn.
Hey, Brooklyn.
Everything good comes out of Brooklyn.
Right. So this is happening at the Brooklyn Navy Yard. This kind of some
of the most important work was performed there. And
what was your favorite baseball team growing up?
You wouldn't believe it.
Tell me.
Pittsburgh.
Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
Not Brooklyn?
No.
You had to ask that question.
That wasn't bad. It was the Giant fans that caused the problem.
Were you aware of any of this going on, the ships coming to England while you were fighting in France? Were you aware of the struggles to get the armaments over? Were you aware that America was trying desperately to get weapons and the Congress didn't want them to come before America was in the war?
Well, I of course, how could you not be aware of it if you listened to the radio and read the daily news?
This is before America was in the war.
Oh, before America was in
Yes.
the war. No, I don't know that it was.
I don't think many people could have followed that. It wasn't really reported in the news.
It wasn't reported.
Yeah, how would a teenager know that kind of stuff?
No, they bombed the French boats that the German wanted to capture. So the English boat went over there and told them to get out. They were shooting against them in England. So they demolished about 6-7 boats with the pre-build.
You're right. That precipitated the Lend-Lease program.
Yeah.
How did you get supplies? Because Mike Taylor, Shannon's dad, who was a veteran of the French underground, who fought the Nazis tooth and nail.
We had a correspondence with the American Liberator airplane, and we have a military radio connection directly, and they told notes that la carabine n'a que 20 balles. It means the carabine had 20 bullets. So this was our name, be prepared. So at night, again, they said, the same number said, be prepared tonight, we're coming to drop munition. And so we went to a mountain, we were a mountain, but a place that shouldn't be trees. Clearing. And we had Morse when the plane came and signaled.
Did you clap?
Clap. And then they dropped the munition, and then they dropped 8 American paratroopers.
This was after D-Day.
No.
The paratroopers came after D-Day. The ammunition came before.
Yeah, right. Yeah, right. After the same time at D-Day.
Around the same time.
The same time.
They were dropping people a little bit before, during.
No, it was on the same day. On the same day, because General de Gaulle was on the radio. He gave the order to sabotage all the German troops who want to go. Help
at the coast there.
Yeah, so we attacked them. We blew up a military train, Luftwaffe, with 100 soldiers there and 5 anti-aircraft cannons. Anti-aircraft to shoot American planes. So we stopped them. They blew up the.
Did you get a medal? The Americans didn't give you a medal for
And we
that?
fought the whole
Well,
night.
they took him into the First Army.
Oh, that was your medal, getting
Right.
drafted.
Yeah, but
But as a result,
Right.
he had legal status to get to Israel.
Okay, because you were in the American Army, they gave you the status.
after we capitulate with this, after we capitulate the two cities, Mazamé,
captured the city.
yeah, Castres and Mazamé, big city. Have the real picture on that, and.
You should see these 75 soldiers marching through a town of thousands of French. 75 Jews marching through thousands of French.
Were they
who-
cheering
well,
you? Were they
yeah.
happy?
Oh,
They were
Yeah,
having a good
sure.
They should be ashamed of
The girls
themselves.
running around. How did you keep the girls away?
And we
Do you
took,
think he wanted
and we
it?
took 30,000 prisoners, German prisoners.
They just came and gave up, right?
I saw it. I was on the front, and the Americans went to the commander of the German general. They had one arm only,
Had a rough life.
and they had a gun. So
He had one arm on the side, one arm on the side.
so the,
Oh man, I don't know if I should be laughing about that.
So when
I
the
am.
flag,
Okay.
flag. So the American soldier took the gun out of his pistol,
Why didn't you take the other arm?
and I saw all this.
But there's a very...
And I saw the surrounding. It was a big post of army, a German army there,
But-
stationed.
And from
in
there-
They had
Castres.
enough.
And from
Yeah.
there, they went on to the German lines and to liberate Dachau and
Yeah.
But there's an interesting juxtaposition here that I don't want to
Yeah,
miss.
Go for it.
When you were working at the Brooklyn Navy Yards with the Liberty ships, it came after what my father mentioned. But Roosevelt did not think England was up to par, certainly after Chamberlain negotiated the giving away of Czechoslovakia. But what Churchill did was he made a decision when the French admirals would not surrender their ships or let them leave France to join the English Navy, and they were staying in Africa waiting for Hitler, supposedly, he sent his own navy to go and attack the French ships in a famous battle in Africa and wipe out most of the French navy, for which France never forgave England, even though they were occupied. And it was then that Roosevelt was impressed, and Roosevelt pushed through the Liberty ship program. And that all happened before there was a declaration of war from America, and that's when you came into play with the ships. And he was in France at the time when this whole controversy about was taking place
And that's
about the
fascinating,
French
right.
ships.
And that tells you a lot about World War II, because it was really, being a total war, it was a war of whole nations.
The whole world.
Right? Not only the soldiers would be nothing without huge countries behind them and the production capabilities of those countries supplying them.
And without America, there was nothing.
Nothing,
Right?
yeah.
Am I right? There was nothing coming.
Well, just to follow up on that now, I don't know if this follows along the same lines, but basically that test that I was talking about
Right, the Charby test.
changed the life cycle of most of the ships. That the incidence of brittle failure, of simply falling apart, that disappeared, and with it came the ability to develop steels and to heat treat them in such a way that it would never happen again. What that meant was that the steels could be depended on reliability to not feel catastrophically under pressure. And we used that knowledge fruitfully in building the first nuclear power plant in this country. That we applied it, the testing,
I see.
that had never been done before,
And that's fascinating how
to
yeah.
the piping that held the high pressure water and the high pressure steam in the nuclear power plant, so the pipes wouldn't fail, and it was included in the same with the same importance as just a simple tensile test for strength and bending test for ductility. And it was applied to the welding as well as to the piping base metal. And I am not aware that we have suffered any kind of a failure of that nature in any nuclear.
Of pipes in a nuclear plant just failing because of the tensile, because the strength, steel is too brittle.
Right. Okay. That
Brittle being like peanut brittle.
As the pipe
Right.
the pipe gets heated up, it takes on distortions of different shapes, and it's controlled with all pipe hangers and the likes of that. But nevertheless, any kind of a shock could cause that.
It's interesting that and this tells you a lot about the job of an engineer, right? Taking a problem, you took a problem, ships that were sinking for unexplained reasons, finding out what that problem was, discovering a solution to that problem, applying that solution to the next level of development.
Yes, and I think it is fundamentally used now in the design of in the specification of material steels for the piping, and fruitfully so.
You went on to be in charge of piping code, right?
Yes. Yes.
What is that? You don't have to go too much into detail. Only a few more minutes, but tell us just a little bit.
Well, from the time when failures in power plants and in, let's say, gas piping and ultimately nuclear piping, codes were people from industry were assembled together, and they would write the minimum requirements that would be in as part of the code that would be applied.
Like a building code.
Exactly. And for different industries, refrigeration, gas, nuclear, power, piping, and the likes of that. And those codes, and I
wrote those codes.
I helped write those codes. I was a member of the code body for power piping. And
so when those pipes don't do the job they're supposed to do and do not fail, you can thank.
Oh, come on! No,
in part,
people from around the country use the intelligence and the experience.
No, I agree with you. We can we can thank you.
I always go to the person, right? Like we can thank you for stopping the Nazis. Thank you for stopping the Nazis. All right, whatever you had to do. Thank you, Dad, for making sure the Liberty ships got to where they had to go. So guys on the front line like him had plenty of ammunition.
Yes, and we thank the people with guts and intelligence to go ahead wherever you look. Ford sent the literature to inspire Hitler to kill the people. And the heads of the corporations sent the industry to Germany, which was not an industrial nation, to create the industry in Germany and keep it going. And they have nothing but shame and murder. But we can turn to the heroes of the country, the Audie Murphys and the others, with pride that there's an America, and the Churchills, that there's an England that inspired, other than the former king who wanted to be a Nazi, and the Vichy who wanted to be Nazis, and so on and so forth. And the Toscaninis, we can praise the Toscaninis. You know, was the Manhattan Project based in part on the developments that took part earlier?
Well, we only have a few minutes, and that's see. I want to ask this question. We only have a few minutes. Can I ask this question? It's related.
Why go right ahead?
It's related to what you want to ask, because you're talking about power and power piping, coal, nuclear. Which do you think?
All of it. We can't afford to turn our backs on any potential source of energy. We'd be fools to do it. They all have their positive aspects. They all have the consequences of it. Coal burns, makes ash. It gives off a
carbon dioxide, global
and
warming.
all of that. Okay, yeah. But we would be cutting our nose off the spot.
But can't we be environmentally conscious at the same time and take every precaution with the nets
course,
for the coal?
Of course, from the mine all the way through the burning of it and the disposal of the ash, and of course, and it's carefully monitored to do so. to the best of our ability. And we found new ways of cleaning coal, removing a lot of the detrimental products, the ash and the likes of that, to minimize it at the power plant. And we have ways of capturing the products of combustion through electrostatic precipitators and to take the hot gases that emanate through cooling towers. You've seen those parabolic cooling towers. I think they're beautiful. Some people think they're
ugly.
Ugly on the horizon.
But they're necessary.
And they're useful, and they reduce the amount.
And we breathe because of them, and we keep our resources because of them. But the argument is third world countries are exempt because they're third world countries. Does that hold water with you?
Well, it's a question of how much money you want to invest and can invest. I mean, if the third world countries, because
they get our money. We give them the money. And then they don't want to repay us. Why don't we use this money? The Palestinians got a fortune of our money. It went into Arafat's widow. Why don't they use it to prevent toxins from coming into environmental countries like Israel?
They don't consume as much energy as the...
we consume the most.
Of course. So we have an incredible need for the power plants and for the...
but China pollutes the most.
We also have a special responsibility to clean it up because we use most of it.
Of course.
But why didn't we clean up South America, where all our companies went, and the pollution, destruction is still there?
Well, how about we clean up the United States and then China number 2, right? China needs to wake up to the need to clean up their country too.
I think the next point of importance as far as because they use a lot of coal in China.
As
their industry expands, they're definitely.
One last question. My father could not talk about the Holocaust when he came here. No one wanted to hear about it. Was it talked about in your circles after the war?
Of course. How could it escape anyone's attention? How could it? Any person who would read a newspaper, would listen to a radio, would be privy to the information, of course. We sent our boys to war to overcome the situation to the best, and we did. In the last analysis, all the people, there's no more of a Hitler. The Hitler doesn't exist. There are other people who want to be demagogues and take his place, and we have something brewing in the Middle East.
Thank you very much, my dad, Paul Sr., Michael Taylor, and Shannon Taylor, and we'll see you next week.